Since the passing of the U.S. Housing Act in 1937, we've known those of us who are struggling economically can always fall back on public housing as a safety net. Well, politicians have described the housing as a stepping stone to a better life. However, NBC3 has uncovered a loophole that keeps some on that stepping stone when financially they don't need to be there any longer. New at 11, our Brett Hall investigates.
Tom Canuss has lived here at the Toomey Abbott Towers in Syracuse since early September. He says he was on the waiting list with the Syracuse Housing Authority for quite some time before he was cleared to move in. How long were you on the waiting list?
3 years.
That answer is not out of the ordinary. According to the Syracuse Housing Authority, there are currently 1,600 people waiting to be assigned to one of 2,300 public housing units in the city.
This is should be for low income and disabled.
To even be put on the waiting list, a person or family must have a combined gross annual income less than a certain amount. For one person, the limit is $37,950. If there are 3 people in the apartment, the household can't make more than $49,000. 6 people, no more than $62,850. However, NBC3 did some digging and found there are several households in the city making above the housing limit. One couple, currently living in a Syracuse Housing Authority property, makes more than $62,000. That's $19,000 over the maximum that allows them to move in.
He should be gone.
The HUD Office of Inspector General published the findings over the summer. At that time, 13 units in Syracuse reported incomes greater than rules allow for first-time occupants. The Inspector General's report states that across the country, taxpayers are paying in upwards of $100 million each year on families living with overincome in public housing. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development followed that up with this letter to all executive directors, including the one here in Syracuse, saying it is up to their discretion to craft a policy that would evict those that are making more than they should. Bill Simmons has been the executive director of the Syracuse Housing Authority for 9 years. He says there is currently no policy in place requiring overincome families here to move out.
The quality of public housing in Syracuse is equal to or better than most of the housing in Syracuse in the private sector in general. But if you come in eligible, then there's no maximum that you can make. So I don't see that as a big problem, those few families.
But those on the waiting list who have been on it for years may see it as a problem. However, Simmons says there is movement. He says his agency sees 250 families move in and out every year.
If you're looking at it from a public policy standpoint, where we're looking at, we don't want to have a concentration of poverty, we want to deconcentrate poverty, have mixed kinds of communities and incomes, then you would want to encourage that income range and strata.
He says taxpayers shouldn't be up in arms, for it benefits them as well.
The more families are working and paying their share of their income towards rent, that's less subsidy that HUD has to put in.
So that Syracuse couple who is making $19,000 over the housing limit, 30% of their income is going towards rent. But for those who have been on that multi-year-long waiting list, they would like to see something else done soon. The Office of the Inspector General recommends local housing authorities come up with appropriate time limits dictating when overcome families have to move out. They suggest determining a time frame to execute an eviction notice, and they encourage exemptions for the elderly and disabled. For NBC3, I'm Brett Hall.
Now, we placed a call to Bill Simmons' office asking if the Syracuse Housing Authority had any plans of creating a policy that would evict those over-income families. We've yet to hear back, although he did do that interview. Syracuse is not the only area facing these issues. Our digging finds over-income families living in public housing in Cortland, Cayuga, and Oneida counties, too.